Hey, fellow babies. Welcome to this week's Pachter Factor, filmed from my home on a Saturday. Waning afternoon. We're almost done with the day. Look, I'm at home because I can't get this done during work because I've been busy. E3's coming up. Follow me on Twitter. I'll live tweet at Michael Pachter. Looking forward to having new followers. If you're watching on SIFTD.net, you're paying for this, so you don't have to follow me on Twitter. I'll forgive you because you're paying for the privilege. First question this week from Twitter, from @ThoughtlessKyle. With the rise of mobile gaming and the Switch being a hybrid device, do you think that the 3DS will be Nintendo's last dedicated handheld? I don't. I think Nintendo, honestly, they believe in handheld. They really have done well. I think that the Switch might end up being like a mini Switch. I think like the next handheld is going to be a Switch Mini, where the Joy-Cons, instead of being detachable, will be attached. It'll be a single device. And so you'll go from a screen that's that big to a screen that's maybe more like a cell phone with the Joy-Cons built in. That's really the smart thing to do. And, you know, who knows if the software will be the same. So the question will be, can you buy the same games and play them on both devices? For sure you'll be able to in the e-store, whatever, the e-commerce store. But I don't think they're going to stop making handhelds. And frankly, I think of the Switch as a handheld. Our next question comes from the SIFTD website from Francis Alex. Microsoft will fully unveil the Scorpio at E3, and Nintendo will show Mario Odyssey. I can't wait for that. And potentially announce new games based on its biggest IPs for Switch. What should Sony's strategy be to avoid getting lost among the excitement for these two new platforms? You know, Sony is going to have some exclusives. I think we'll probably hear about an Insomniac first party because they're a pretty big studio. I think you'll probably hear about one of their classics, classic studios. Naughty Dog, I bet that there's a new Naughty Dog IP unveiled at E3. So I think Sony can hold its own. There's not going to be a hardware announcement, but I think they could probably cut the price of both PlayStation VR and PS4 Pro. So frankly, I think gamers are going to like E3. I think that you're going to have a lot of stuff going on. But honestly, it's okay if Sony isn't number one for like that day. Who cares? Like, we're going to hear good stuff from everybody. So anyway, no, I think Sony's fine. And frankly, I don't know what Microsoft's going to announce for Scorpio. So it'll be interesting to see what the IP is. I don't know if we're going to have a lot of new IP, but Microsoft's pretty prolific at bringing out a lot of first-party stuff. My dog was attacking Shane right now. Our next question from SIFTD from the Champ. You must be a Street Fighter player. Street Fighter V is one of the most popular fighting games and has even been televised on ESPN. However, it's never hit its initial sale goal of 2 million units. Meanwhile, Capcom is paying travel, lodging, location costs, prize purses, and more for its Pro Tour. How are publishers turning a profit on eSports? They're not. So, look, I don't even want to talk about Street Fighter. Street Fighter is a really great competition game. You know, it's head-to-head. It's easy to figure out who wins, easy to do brackets. So it's like college basketball or whatever, college football. You know, the winner, loser, the winner advances, the loser's out. So pretty easy to manage a head-to-head tournament like that as opposed to team-based, you know, Call of Duty terms and stuff. They're harder to manage. But I don't think, you know, all they're trying to do is get more people to pay attention to Street Fighter V. And if more people learn about it because they see it on eSports, maybe they'll sell another 100,000 or 200,000 units. The answer to your question, though, publishers don't make money on eSports. So the real question is, what is the business model for eSports? And it is complicated. There's really only two ways to think about eSports. You can try to position yourself as ESPN and make money off of somebody else's content and be the distributor of the sport. So have the competition, and ESPN televises it. They distribute that signal and charge advertising. Or you can be like the NFL, where you actually own the sport. So Activision owns Overwatch, for example, or Call of Duty. And you can try to, you know, rent out arenas and sell tickets and get sponsors at the event and hope that you can sell the rights to televise it to ESPN. So ESPN makes money on somebody else's sport. The NFL makes money on their own sport. The publisher is trying to be a little bit of both. They have the sport, and they're trying to show off and showcase their sport, which means they have to rent an arena, put on an event. There are guys who do that, like UMG and ESL, and there are gaming leagues, MLG, who put on these events. But the event itself doesn't make money. So the prize pool is big, the arena rental is big, and that is not offset by ticket sales. It might be offset by sponsorships, but nobody's making money on the actual event itself, except the winners of the event. But no publisher's making any money on that. So they will only make money if they can make the event so popular that people want to watch it on TV, which could be the internet, but they want to watch a stream, a broadcast of the event. And that's what Twitch does. And the money is in advertising to that audience. So that's hard to do because you're not going to make much ad revenue unless you have a lot of eyeballs. League of Legends makes money. So there's a company called BAMTech, which is partly owned by Disney. I think it's a Chinese company that paid League of Legends $50 million a year for the right to broadcast worldwide League of Legends tournaments. Clearly, BAMTech thinks they can collect more than $50 million in ad revenue, and clearly Riot Games, who owns League of Legends, is going to take $50 million because they don't have to deal with it. That's how the NFL works. The NFL sells its TV rights for, I think, in the aggregate, about $2 billion, and let all the different broadcasters, NBC, ABC, CBS, Fox, ESPN, and ABC are the same. And now Amazon on Thursday Night Football, and last year Twitter on Thursday Night Football, let those guys take the risk of selling advertising. They're paying for the rights. So you can either be the NFL or you can be ESPN. It's hard to be both. But until you get to the level where somebody actually wants to sit through ads to watch the content, no one's making money on this other than the gamers themselves. Our last question for our last episode, until I change my shirt. It's from Twitter, from @PocketMobsters. Would a joint venture between Sony and Microsoft be possible or beneficial? It seems that they are fighting for the same consumer. Possible, no. Beneficial, yes. The reason it's not possible is that we have a well-developed set of laws, and until Trump completely guts all federal agencies in the U.S., we'll enforce those laws. And one of them is a series of laws that's collectively called antitrust. And antitrust came about because John D. Rockefeller, great name, started a company called Standard Oil, and he pretty much cornered the market on oil production and refining and distribution. So he pretty much owned everything, and he created this giant trust. And about 60 years later, a company called AT&T did the same thing with telephones. And so the antitrust laws were created to stop one company from owning everything, because if one company has the exclusive rights to all oil production, they can charge whatever they want for gasoline, and that's bad for consumers. If there's competition and multiple companies own oil production and refining and distribution, then theoretically they'll compete on price, and they'll lower the price to where they're making a profit, but they're priced below the guy next door, and you'll pick that gas station. So that's why we have Coke and Pepsi. That's why we have a bunch of different brands making TVs. That's why we have a bunch of cell phone service providers. Not very many, but in the U.S. we have AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, and T-Mobile at least, and then a bunch of prepaid guys. It's hard for those guys to buy one another because the antitrust laws keep them from combining. Because once, let's say Sony and Microsoft combined, and they said, if you want to play Call of Duty, it's now going to be $100 a year. And they said to Activision, instead of charging you $12 per copy, we're going to charge you $50. They could if they were the only place to play it. And so they're not going to be allowed to combine, because by combining and eliminating competition, there is no competition. Why would you charge a price any lower than the consumer is willing to pay? If there is competition, you would charge less than the consumer is willing to pay. because you want their market share. So what in a competitive world, items are priced at cost plus a profit. In a non-competitive world, they're priced at the market clearing price, whatever somebody's willing to pay. And it depends, obviously, but if the only way you could get to the airport, if there was only one car that could drive you to the airport and you absolutely had to make your flight and it was only 10 miles away, you might pay $300. But if there's Uber and there's a bunch of guys competing, it's going to cost you $10. So you want to have competition because that keeps the price down. And so no, Sony and Microsoft can't combine. Yes, it would be immensely beneficial. I'm happy to answer questions in 140 characters or less on Twitter if you follow me. So if you follow me and you have questions and I'm bored, I will answer them anytime. So go ahead and post them on Twitter. If you don't follow me, screw you. I'm not going to answer your question because you're not worth my breath. Thank you for joining us on the Pachter Factor on SIFTD.net. We hope you guys are members because Shane spends a lot of his free time on Saturday filming these things. He's got investments in equipment that was ripped off and he had to buy more. So he's really not making any money and we could use some members. If not, and you're watching on YouTube, I get it. You don't value the Pachter Factor very much. So at the minimum, maybe follow me on Twitter at Michael Pachter. If not, then okay, follow Justin Timberlake and ask him what he thinks about video games and he'll tell you. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.